The number on the wall of my bedroom at 7 minutes past 4 was not money, it was cars. 940 of them sitting at exit barriers with their engines running and their drivers leaning on horns, and the number was climbing at about 1 car every 2 seconds, and my laptop fan was already screaming because I had opened everything at once. Ridgeway Retail Park, 400 spaces, all 4 exit lanes dead. Kesgrave Airport long stay, 1,200 spaces, dead. Deansgate, the big spiral one, dead in a way that meant people were reversing back up a one-way ramp in the dark. I was sitting on the edge of the bed in yesterday's shirt with the phone wedged between my ear and my shoulder, and the on-call line was ringing at me from 3 directions, and the payments book, the one machine that writes down every single card tap in every garage we run, was answering roughly 1 question in every 400. Everything else in the company was standing outside that machine's door knocking, and none of them had been told to ever stop knocking. Bridget said something from under the duvet about whether it was the thing again, and I said yes, and she said the word she saves for it, and rolled over. At 4:15, Sanjay, 11 weeks into his first engineering job, sent me a photograph a night manager had sent him. It was a hospital car park in Corley, 2nd level, and you could see 14 sets of brake lights in a queue and a woman in scrubs standing in front of the barrier with both palms flat on it, as if she could push it up by herself. Underneath the photo Sanjay had typed, in the voice of a man who does not yet know what he is looking at, "Is this us?" 6 weeks earlier, I had been the internal candidate for lead engineer on payments, and at my sister's wedding in April, holding a glass, in front of about 70 people including her new in-laws, I had promised my mother out loud that we were getting her out of the 3rd floor flat with the 2 staircases and into the ground floor place by the harbor before Christmas. And the raise that came with that job was exactly what the deposit was. My actual work, day-to-day, was the money path. When somebody taps a card at an exit barrier in a garage in a town I have never visited, my code takes that tap, asks the card processor for the money, waits, writes the result in the payments book, and tells the barrier to lift. That is it. That is the whole job, and it is the entire company. Because a garage that cannot take money and cannot lift a barrier is just a concrete building full of angry people. The payments book was the pinch point, and everybody knew it was the pinch point. Every garage, every ticket machine, every season pass, every refund, every phone app, all of it eventually went through that one machine, because 10 years ago somebody built it that way and nobody had ever been given 3 months to unbuild it. The man who got the job instead of me was Duncan. In my own head, and only in my own head, I called him Tailwind, because he could not open his mouth in a meeting without telling us about headwinds in the market and tailwinds in the roadmap, and I once counted 6 of them in 11 minutes. When you asked Duncan a direct question, he took his glasses off, breathed on both lenses, and polished them on his sleeve while he decided what to say, and by the time they went back on you had usually forgotten what you asked. I want to be fair to him, so here is the fair bit. He grew pears on an allotment, and brought them in by the bag, actual bags, and in January when Sanjay opened his hand on a rack rail and went white, it was Duncan who drove him to the walk-in clinic and sat with him for 2 hours and never mentioned it again. He had come to us from Brackwater, the agency that built the original barrier control software for our company back before I joined, and he demoed his big idea in the 2nd week of March in the long room with the broken blind. New retry and recovery logic for the money path. If the card processor was slow, if the network hiccuped, if the book was busy, his code would just keep trying until the payment landed, so no driver would ever be stuck at a barrier again. He put a chart up. Our old numbers on the left, his on the right, and the right-hand side was beautiful. Delia, our chief technology officer, asked him whether it was his own work, and he took the glasses off and breathed on them, and said it was a side project he had been chipping away at for a while. That evening I read it. Not to be a hero, I read it because from Monday I was going to be on call for it, and I have been woken up by other people's confidence enough times to want to know what it does first. It took me 40 minutes to be uncomfortable and about 10 more to be certain. The shape of it was wrong for us. It was built for a system that has a queue in front of it, and we do not have a queue. We have a door. There was a comment in the middle explaining what to do if the toll plaza controller does not respond, and we do not have toll plazas. We have barriers, and nobody at our company has ever once used the word plaza. The spelling mistake in one of the function names, the one where somebody had put the I before the E, appeared in exactly the same place in Brackwatter's product documentation, which is a public download, which I downloaded. The license header had been cut off the top of the file. The word Brackwater appeared nowhere, and it had appeared nowhere so carefully that in one place a whole line was blank where it used to be. So he had taken his old employer's paid product, filed the name off it, and told our chief technology officer it was his side project. And I sat there in the kitchen at 11:30 with the fridge humming and had to admit to myself that I was going to be a certain kind of person about this no matter how I said it, because he had that job and I had a promise to my mother. I raised it in the Thursday review, in the long room, all of us there. I said the code was not ours, and I said where it came from, and I said the spelling mistake and the toll plaza thing out loud, which sounds small, but is not small, because code does not catch other people's typing habits by coincidence. Duncan's glasses came off. He said he had worked on that engine at Brackwater with his own hands, and he was not going to apologize for knowing how to solve a problem twice. Delia said the sourcing question was one for our legal people, and she would take it away, and I could see her actually writing it down, and then I made the mistake of also being right about the second thing, which was the thing that mattered. I said the retrying would kill us. I said it plainly because it is plain. Right now, if the payments book gets slow, our terminals wait, get a failure, and give up, and a driver gets a message asking them to tap again. It is embarrassing, and it is not fatal. Under Duncan's code, if the book gets slow, every terminal in every garage in the country keeps asking, faster, and never stops asking, and the asking is the thing that kills it. A machine that is struggling to answer 400 questions cannot possibly answer 40,000, and by trying to be kind to the drivers, we would put the whole country on the floor at once. I said, and I remember the exact sentence because I have thought about it since, that when the one machine gets slow, everything else keeps knocking until it goes under completely. Duncan said there was a limiter. He was right, there was. Ours was old and boring, and it sat in front of the book and told the terminals to back off and wait their turn, and it had saved us twice that I knew about. I said his code fights it, because his code treats a back-off instruction as a reason to try again immediately, and he said that was a tuning question, and Delia looked at the clock, and Duncan said something about not letting perfect be the enemy of the drivers sitting at our barriers tonight, which is a very hard sentence to argue with in a room with a broken blind and 11 minutes left. Then he said the thing that ended it. He said, in front of everybody, in a kind and level voice, that he understood this had been a difficult process for me, and he wanted to make sure the technical conversation was actually technical. Agnes, who has been there 9 years and does not blink much, put her pen down. I said fine. I said please can we at least agree the limiter stays exactly as it is, and Duncan said of course. Obviously, nobody was touching the limiter, and we moved on to a discussion about season pass invoices. Winnie, our tester, caught me by the stairs afterwards with her laptop still open in her arms, and asked me to put the retry problem in writing so she had something to attach to her sign-off, and I said I already had, twice, and she said then put it in a third time and copy her, because she wanted a date on it. The group chat was less careful. Somebody posted the chart from the demo with a caption about tailwinds, and somebody else posted the word plaza on its own, and for about a week you could get a laugh out of anyone on the payments team by saying toll plaza controller in a serious voice. Bram, who is the quietest person in the building and who wrote most of the tooling that keeps the book upright, sent me one message privately that just said the license header thing was not a small thing, and he hoped somebody actually looked. Nobody actually looked. The legal question went into a folder with the sourcing review, and the sourcing review needed a signature from a director, and a director was in the middle of the annual accounts. And by June nobody could remember whose folder it was in. Duncan's code went out on a Tuesday, and he pushed it himself with nobody reading it, because he was now the person who decided who read what, and the numbers on the chart came true. Payment failures dropped by 2/3. He got a mention in the all hands. Winnie resigned in May, and in her last week she told me over a farewell drink that it was not any one thing. It was being the only person in the building whose job was to say no, and she was tired of doing it in writing. In August, I spent most of a Wednesday on the insurance and certification paperwork, which is my least favorite day of the year and which lands on me because I own the money path. Our card scheme auditor is an extremely thorough woman who will not accept a link. She wants a printed sheet, signed and dated, showing every safety limit on the money path, whether it is switched on or off, when it last changed, and who changed it. So I opened the change history for the limits, set the date range, sent it to the printer on the second floor, and went and got it while it was still warm. 3 pages, stapled, signed at the bottom, 1 copy in the envelope for her, and 1 copy in the green folder in my drawer with last year's and the year before's, because the year I did not keep a copy was the year she asked for it again in November. The season pass billing run was scheduled for the last Friday in September, which was also the night of the away leg at the stadium and the night the airport had its autumn overflow. Sanjay was on call for the first time. Bram's father had a stroke on the Thursday afternoon. I picked up on the second ring at 7 minutes past 4 because Sanjay's name was on the screen and Sanjay would not ring me at 4 for fun. He was talking too fast, and I could hear a keyboard. He said the book was slow. He had restarted the 2 terminal servers like the runbook said, and now it was worse, a lot worse. I told him to stop touching anything and read me the number of waiting requests, and he read it. And then he read it again 40 seconds later, and it had troubled. Here is what 4 in the morning actually looks like in my house. I sit on the floor of the spare room with my back against the radiator because the socket is there. I put the on-call bridge on the laptop speaker so my hands are free, and I have about 4 minutes before other people arrive, and it becomes a meeting. In those 4 minutes I found the thing. The billing run had woken up at 3 and started reconciling season passes, which means it reads and writes a lot of rows in the payments book at once, which is fine. It has done that on the last Friday of every month for 6 years. What was different was that the book got slow for about 90 seconds. And in those 90 seconds, every terminal in every garage got a slow answer and did what Duncan's code told them to do, which was ask again straight away, and then again, harder. Then the app did it. Then the barrier controllers did it. 40,000 questions a second at a machine that could no longer manage 400, and every one of those questions had a driver on the end of it. Agnes joined at 20 past 4 with her camera off and said, before anyone had briefed her, "It's dogpiling, isn't it?" And I said yes. And she said, "Then nothing we do matters until we make it stop asking." We tried 5 things. I want to be honest about all of them. We restarted the book. It came up clean in 90 seconds and looked wonderful for about 11 of them. And then the entire backlog of held-up requests, every terminal that had been knocking for 20 minutes, arrived at the same instant and put it straight back on the floor, harder than before. Agnes said we had just given a man a glass of water by aiming a fire hose at him. We tried to roll Duncan's code back. This is where I stopped being angry and got scared, because the rollback had never worked and nobody knew, since nobody had ever tried it in anger. The new code writes an extra field into every payment record, and the old code, seeing a record shaped in a way it does not recognize, will not start at all. It does not warn you. It exits. Sanjay ran it, read me the error, and I had him read it again, and then there was a silence on the bridge of about 6 seconds, which is a very long time at 4:30 in the morning. We tried to turn the limiter back up, the boring old thing that tells terminals to back off. This is where I found out. It was not turned down. It was gone. Someone had not adjusted the limit on the money path. Someone had switched the whole thing off, and the line in the file where its setting used to live had been deleted, so we did not even have the number it used to be set to. I said out loud on the bridge that the limiter was off, and Duncan, who had joined at some point without saying anything, said we should focus on recovery and not on archaeology. We tried the standby copy of the book, the one that is supposed to be seconds behind, so you can swing over to it in a crisis. It was 9 hours behind. The copying process had been quietly falling further behind since March, because every retry writes a little more than a plain attempt does, and the copier had never been sized for that, and it had been sending its complaints to a mailbox that belonged to Winnie. Swinging to it would have meant losing every payment taken since 7 the previous evening, on a stadium night, and Delia, who arrived on the bridge at 10 to 5 sounding like someone who had been handed a phone in a dark kitchen, said no. Then somebody, I think it was the night manager for the northern sites, asked on the phone line whether we could just open all the barriers and let everyone out for free and sort it out later. Everybody stopped. It was a good idea and I loved him for it, and it did not work, because the instruction that opens a barrier goes through the same door as everything else. We could not even give the money away. That was the moment I understood how bad it was, and I said it in a flat voice into the laptop. We cannot reach our own garages, because our garages are too busy shouting at us. Delia asked for Bram. because Bram wrote the tool that drains the books safely, and Bram is the only person who has ever used it. And that tool exists in one man's head and in about 40 lines with no notes around them. Agnes said Bram's father had a stroke on Thursday. Delia asked where he was, and there was a pause, and Agnes said Corley General. Corley General, whose staff car park is on our system, which at that moment had a queue of 14 cars on the second level and a woman in scrubs with her palms on a barrier. He answered at 5:20. I have thought about that call a lot. He was in a corridor, and you could hear a trolley, and he said his dad was going in at 6, and he was sorry, and he did not have a laptop. He had a phone and a plastic cup. I said I only needed the order, and he told me the order, twice, and I typed it. And then he said the thing that actually saved us, which was that the drain does nothing at all unless the terminals are silent first, because the drain is slower than the retries. Then he said he had to go, and he did. So at 5:27, Delia gave the instruction that no engineer wants to give, which is to make the product stop existing. We killed every terminal service in the country, everything, all at once. Every screen at every barrier went black. Every card reader died. 46 garages, no software at all. Then, in the enormous quiet on the other side of that, with nothing knocking, the book came up and stayed up, and Sanjay ran the drain in the order Bram gave me. And it took 9 minutes to eat a backlog of 812,000 held requests, and I watched the number go down and could not speak. Then we brought garages back in batches of 4, with the limiter rebuilt by hand at a number Agnes guessed from an old graph, and it held. 6 hours and 41 minutes total. 9,400 cars stuck at some point in the night. Attendants winding barriers up by hand where there were attendants, and where there were not, at Ridgeway, and at 2 others, the fire service came out and did it. 14 refund complaints from the airport before 8 in the morning. A photo of the Deansgate spiral, cars nose to tail all the way up, on a local news site by 9. Monday, 10 o'clock, the long room with the broken blind. Delia, Agnes, Duncan, me, Sanjay against the wall looking like he wanted to be anywhere else, 2 people from operations, and the director who had never signed the sourcing review sitting with his hands folded. Delia said, "Walk me through it." Duncan walked us through it. He was good, and I want to be clear that he was good, because it would be easier if he had been bad. He talked about an unprecedented combination of load, a stadium night, and an airport overflow, and a monthly billing run landing on the same 6 hours, and he called it a 100-year event twice. Agnes said the billing run happens every month and the stadium happens every fortnight. Duncan took his glasses off and breathed on them, and said that in isolation, yes. Delia asked why nothing caught it. That was round 2. He said the on-call engineer was 11 weeks in, which was a resourcing decision, and the one person who genuinely understood the recovery tooling was unreachable for family reasons, which nobody could have planned for, and it was very unfortunate. Sanjay looked at the table. Then Duncan said the sentence he had been walking toward the whole time, in that kind level voice, that the honest answer was that there had been no protection in place on the money path. Nobody had put a limit there. Nobody had raised it. And that was a gap in the team going back years, and he would own fixing it. I opened the green folder and put the 3 stapled pages on the table and turned them around so they faced Delia. That's the safety limits sheet. Who switched off the top one? Then I shut up, which is the hardest part, and is the only part one I'm proud of. Delia turned the first page toward herself. She read the top line out. The way you read something you are hoping says something else. The name of the limit on the money path. The date, the 14th of March. The word off. The name of the person who did it, which was Duncan's, in full, the way our systems always write it. And then the reason box, because our change history has a reason box, and it will not let you save without typing in it. And what he had typed in it was that the limiter conflicted with the Brackwater retry engine and was off temporarily for the demo. Duncan said the reason field was shorthand, and everybody used names like that loosely. Delia said the 14th of March was 2 days before he told her, in that room, that the engine was his own side project. Duncan reached up to take his glasses off, and his hand stopped by his ear and stayed there. Nobody spoke for a while. The director who had never signed the sourcing review asked for a copy of the pages. Agnes said, quietly, to the room rather than to Duncan, that the whole night had one cause, and it was not the stadium. The book got slow for 90 seconds, and because the limiter was gone, Every terminal in the country kept asking harder and harder until it went under completely, and then kept asking so hard we could not get in to save it. Delia asked me whether that was accurate. I said it was, and that I had said it in that room in March, and she said she knew, and she said it in front of everybody, which I had not expected. He was gone by Wednesday. Not gone in a dramatic way, no box, no speech, just an email from Delia saying he had left the business with immediate effect, and Brackwater's lawyers wrote to us in October, and our legal people spent the autumn on it, and I am told that is not finished yet. The retry code came out. What replaced it is smaller, more boring, and gives up early on purpose, and when the book gets slow now everything backs off and waits, and a driver occasionally has to tap twice. Delia gave me the payments lead job in the first week of October, backdated to the 1st, which was her idea and not mine. Bram came back in November. His dad came through it, and is walking with a stick and is furious about the stick. We got my mother's keys on the 20th of December. It is a ground floor flat with a wide door and a view of the harbor wall, and my sister came, and we all stood in the empty front room with our coats on because the heating had not been on for a month. My mother looked out at the water for a bit, and then she said, "You said Christmas."